Okay, everybody, welcome to Pod. This is a special class. The thing just evolved. It just went crazy. Let me explain. Every single year, I do collars for a short segment. Sometimes it takes up 6 months, but it's usually a short segment, 2, 3, 4 months to show the process, and then people get to understand that it just repeats and cycles. And I didn't do one last year for any length of time. This year, people really got on me to do it in more detail. We've been getting a lot of suggestions. I said, I'm going to just do it big in the right way for once and all, and then it's recorded and I don't have to do it again. And it sort of took on a life of its own. And it'll make more sense why we're doing this in a moment. But first, let's get started with the disclaimers. And all the disclaimers here and on our website need to be read and agreed to before you continue on. And by participating in the session, you are agreeing to said disclaimers. Now, the session is being recorded, and if you see that light go out, let me know. But I don't want to have to do this a second time because one should be enough. And this is the new February schedule, where tonight we're dealing with the collars study details. Okay, we're starting a 6-month study program of collars. I'm writing a daily journal on everything going on with our example that we're doing, taking snapshots of option chains, comparing different rolling techniques to other rolling techniques to see which would be better under certain circumstances, and then going back and see in hindsight if that was the way to go or not. And then tomorrow is the official start. It is scheduled for tomorrow. It's a 99.9% chance it's starting tomorrow. The only thing that would stop us is a technical glitch. I'm ready to go. Okay, everything I got to do on my end is ready. Now, we do have technical glitches. We are opening up extra Slack accounts, all kinds of things behind the scenes to get ready for this. And I know the girls in the office are dealing with Slack as we speak, so that anybody who is in this program gets separate Slack updates when it comes to the collar. So the live trading session was moved to next week. And then I have one student that requested something that is pretty much echoed by everybody, which is transitioning into professional trading. And I promised I would get that in there as fast as I can. So without getting rid of any of the classes that we were ready to be scheduled in February, we moved them out to March. And what you'll see is for the 6-month collar program that we're doing, we're going to have a total of at least 6 pot classes. We may have bonus classes like during the trading day. But we're going to have at least 6 months or 6 pot classes over 6 months, plus the trades, plus the journal. Anyone not in pot can sign up for $159 a month, and that's about $5 a day. And that's what's causing all the problem in the background. As soon as I said last week, we're just going to have a 6-month study on collars, people who weren't in pot, because they don't have the time to focus as much detail as we put into the pot class, but have a tremendous interest in collars, started asking, how do I get in? And the girls say, well, you sign up for pot. And they're like, no, I just want the collars portion. Glenda and I spoke. I wasn't a real fan of this, but she sold me on it. I'm flexible to a certain degree. And so we have, it's a mini pot. It's a subsection of pot. It's the collars pot. Now, anybody in pot doesn't have to worry about it. Okay, you're getting this $159 product for free. That's our way of saying thank you for being loyal in pot. And it is the only people that are going to have to pay for this are people who are not in pot, buy our products, love our mini classes. We have a lot of people that show up to every single mini class but don't have the time for pot that are now dying to get into the collars portion. So even if you're in pot and not buying this because you're getting it for free, being in tonight's class is very important because you're going to get an understanding of what is different about this time that we're doing collars. I stated previously that every year we do a little bit on collars. It varies. During COVID, we did 4 month chunks where we just kept acquiring more stocks because the market was so choppy, and we were going into stocks that were purposely designed to fall in that circumstances. People wanted to see, what do I do if I own airlines or cruise line stocks? And so we did American Airlines, and I forgot what cruise line we did, but I said, fine, you want to catch a falling knife? Let's catch them. Okay. Collars are great because when the market falls apart, it protects you. So if you want an example of a horrendous market, own an airline when the whole world shuts down. Own the cruises when the world shuts down. And we did. And we have those little segments every single year, but this time is a lot different. And so people in pot who have been part of collars in the past are not even going to recognize how I'm dealing with collars now, because we're going to the nth degree in education professionalism on this. So we're going to have one collar class per month. It is going to usually be the last week of the month. At least that's how I see it. I was thinking about making it the third week of the month, so that we could have an end of the month roundup if we have like huge amount of trades that are just kicking butt and need to be explained and stuff. But we can always do that anytime, or I'll just have a bonus class. I am not opposed to extra work and throwing in an extra class for you guys as a bonus. I love you guys, and I'm always willing to give you more. But let's get started on the collars class and discuss what this little sub segment of, or sub chapter, or whatever you want to call it, a twin or an appendix or whatever, a pot really is going to be like, because it's going to be a lot bigger and more detailed than any previous collar stuff we've done in the past. So you guys know, as far as stratagem's concerned, we introduce a whole plethora of different strategies throughout the year, and usually the strategies are contingent upon the market environment at the time. But one of the tools we have in our toy box is the collars, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And starting tomorrow, for 6 solid months, we're going to take a stock through its entire 6 month trading range and trade it, compare different strategies, different hedging strategies, rolling strategies, yet everything possible. Every single way that a collar can cause frustration, and they can, we will probably see in 6 months. The market will go up too high and through our hedges on the upside. It'll go too low through our hedges on the downside. We'll have one big correction probably in the 6 month period. And so it's going to be really the perfect example to show every conceivable way that you would ever deal with a collar for whatever stock you're going to be choosing. We were incapable of starting it last Monday because there's just been too much stuff going on in the background, so I had to push it back till Friday. Gives me an extra day today to describe everything I have planned. Now, as I said, we do a lot of short segments every year, but this one's different. And really, a couple of students like Doug and etc. have brought up a lot of great ideas to add to it that I've never attacked before. And so we're going to do this. But how did this class evolve? Well, let me explain how I evolved. First, I started trading as a fluke. Okay, I was waiting. I was going to go to medical school, and then took a summer job. But my goal was to be a doctor. Took a summer job on the board of trade floor. And the moment I got down there, I loved it. I had never been this passionate about anything, except for maybe wrestling. Um, but it was like I was going to become a doctor because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I figured, well, I'm not that smart, but I'm capable of getting into medical school. It's a great living. At least it was back then at the time. Now I don't think I'd ever want to be a doctor. All my friends who are doctors are trying to get out of being physicians. But I took a summer job just because I needed money. My dad was a cop. They couldn't afford school. So I took a summer job. Eventually, I kept getting moved up and given more responsibility. And eventually, I was put on a seat. I was like one of the youngest traders ever on the Chicago Board Options Exchange. And wow, talk about a dream come true. I loved it. No matter what, I hated the weekends. I was bored on the weekends. I wanted to go back to the floors. When the bell rang at the end of the day, there was 5 minutes of relief that I could get a break. And then I missed it again. I loved it that much. But eventually, the trading floor started evaporating and everything started going into computers, and I retired. Sitting around bored because I'm a type A personality and all my friends still work, I had nothing to do all day. And then I had a phone call from somebody in the industry that I highly, highly respect. He's probably one of the richest guys in this industry. And his company gave me my first job. Asked if I'd like to speak in front of a group of people one time. And I said, I get stage fright. I've never spoken in front of, I was that kid in the school plays hiding behind everybody so nobody could see me sing. I didn't want to speak in front of anybody. But I went out and did it, and everybody was so gracious and so nice that I eventually started doing it, teaching more and more and more. And that's how Trade Secrets evolved. And eventually I was Trade Secrets shut down, and I went to Optionetics and became in charge of all their traders and speakers at Optionetics. Well, then Optionetics got bought out by a brokerage firm, and the writing was on the wall. So I left and wrote my own books and started a company. That didn't work out because I started a company with my girlfriend and we broke up. And so I'm like, here's a consolation prize. You keep the company, I'll go start a new company. And it wasn't that amicable. Okay. But it was easier for me just to start a new company than to fight. And so I started Stratagem. And since then, we've been doing collars every year, but now we're doing it full blown big. And this is going to really blow up, guys. I mean, I can't believe I was just, I, in all sincerity, I was just going to start a collar, but keep a little journal and do a little bit more than usual. And the amount of people writing the company and asking, and then people who weren't even in pot, who'd taken our mini classes or who heard about us in various forms of media all over the world are like, can I get in this? Like, get in it. It's free to pot members. Well, I don't have time for pot, but can I pay something to get in just to the collar portion? And that's what we have going on now. Again, we're going to have one collar class per month. I'm guessing at the moment it's going to be the last week of the month. And the pricing is different because it's just a component of pot. So you guys know pot is $2.99 a month, $16.15 for 6 months. And if you're in pot, everything with the collars is free. Okay, we're charging $159 a month, or for 6 months, it's $859, which is, or $858, which is 10% savings, and it brings it down to under $5 a day. Okay, it's less than a cup of coffee. Now, is included in this? This is what's different. In the past, I've just done collars, sent out updates like any other trade. We kept a separate little P&L of it. We'd buy more shares, and at the end, I'd have a pot class say, okay, we started out with 1,000 shares. We have 1,400 shares. The stock was at 80. It ended up at 80. So we didn't make or lose anything on the stock, but we ended up with 400 extra shares of stock. Here's the P&L of the options. We made 40% on the stock that didn't move, plus we have 400 more shares. And I felt a little bit of relief when it was over with, because it's a lot of work. Doing a collar, keeping it up to date, all the updates, the separate P&L sheet that becomes 500 cells long is a lot of work. It's easy when rolling and everything to make journal errors, and it's just constant work. So I felt a little bit of relief when the collar was over. Not that I hate collars. I love collars. I do collars myself. But just from the work end, it was nice to have a little bit less responsibility for a little while. Here, I'm going in the wrong direction. I'm adding responsibility because I'm going to make this the definitive collars class so that it can just be on a bookshelf and people can get it at any time, and I don't have to do this amount of work again, because really this is going to be kicking my butt. I'm going to have a daily journal. At least an entry. Nothing was done today because the stock didn't even move, and there's still a week to go till expiration. Here's the prices, boom. But most of the time, it's going to be a lot more than that. It's going to be, as you can imagine, I'm guessing at least 400 pages long with all the graphs, images, P&L, swing, cut sheets, etc. It's going to be a big, thick book by the time it's done. We're adding Slack as I speak. We're having a separate channels for just the collars people. They won't know what's going on if they're in regular Slack and all of a sudden they see something on a Dragonfly or BWB or risk reversal or something. They don't want to be slammed with stuff that doesn't pertain to them and they don't understand. So we're going to have a separate Slack channel. Anybody in regular pot will be getting their updates in regular Slack channel, so you don't have to worry about monitoring 2 Slack channels. The new Slack channel is just for the people who are enrolling in just the collars portion of pot. Obviously, we're going to have Google Sheets now instead of just a P&L sheet. There's going to be a Google Sheet, so every single thing we do will be recorded within a couple minutes of it being actually executed. Usually I do it instantly, so there's a 1 or 2 minute delay, but if I get busy or I'm answering questions, sometimes there's 5, 10, 20-minute delay, but it's not like you have to wait until the end of the day. And then we have 6 pot classes over the next 6 months dedicated to this. Now, one of the things we're going to be starting out with that's always caused a little bit of confusion with the collar is the put hedge, because I get a little bit fancier. Everybody understands with a traditional collar that you just go out and buy the stock. And that's what I've got a buddy of mine that I work out with at the gym that is in that one semiconductor stock that's on fire right now. I'm not going to mention things. He owns 90 shares of it, and he's made $63,000 on 90 shares since Halloween. Every single day he's texting me, "This is great. It was up $100 today. I made 9 G's on 90 shares." The guy just has a regular little government job. 9 G's is huge to him. He is unbelievably excited about this stuff. And I said, "You got to be careful, man. This thing has gone from 300 to 1,000 in a couple of weeks. It's gone parabolic. I would hedge it." Well, he doesn't know how to. So tonight, when we're meeting at the gym, I'm going to explain for him how to hedge it. But essentially, all he has is this blue line right now. And what most people do when they're hedging a stock is one of several different things. First, some people love the covered call. They just sell calls against the stock to get enhanced returns. If you can get 5% extra a month by selling an out of the money call that's trading for about 5% of the value of the stock, that's a huge return. Now, you have downside risk because the long stock and a short call is a synthetic short put. But in a slow moving bull market, nothing can be beat. Okay, if you had covered calls on the last couple months, you were kicking butt. Now, Tuesday when we fell hard, you were sweating. Most people don't like to sweat. So what they'll do is buy a protective put. Now, if they just buy stock and buy a put that have on a married put, they understand the cost of an option. Okay, because even if the stock goes up every single month, they may end up losing money because it hasn't gone up enough to offset the cost of the put insurance. You have a $100,000 house and your homeowner's insurance is $1,000 a year, and your house appreciates $1,000 a year. You may think, "Hey, I'm making money on this house." Your insurance ate that. You're breaking even. So a lot of people will go out and buy a put, but it gets expensive, so they'll supplement it with a call sell, and that's a traditional collar. You guys have been around in pot a long time, know that I hedge many different ways depending on the stock, depending on volatility, depending on the current market trend, depending on earnings, etc. Every stock has its own season, and there's different ways to manage the downside protection of a stock all throughout the year. The most remedial way that most people do is they'll go out and buy an out of the money put. Let's say the stock's at 170, 175. You could obviously buy the 170 put, and you can see in the bottom right corner that'll cost you almost $6. Well, that's 3.5%, 4% of the value of the stock. It gets pretty expensive. So what people do is usually scoot that put a little out of the money to get it much cheaper. And what they're really doing is just buying disaster insurance. So if the stock's at 170, 175, they'll go out and buy the 160 put, and they'll pay 275 for it. And then you go and look at the break even, and they're comfortable. They know they're not happy that if the stock falls from 170, 175 down to, say, 150, they don't really have that much protection, but they're happy knowing that if it goes to 100, at least they're protected. And I do this once in a while. Most, depending on what's going on in the world and what's going on in volatility. Volatility is extremely cheap, and you can scoot a naked put up pretty close to at the money. And the further out of the money put that you want to sell to turn it into a put spread or butterfly or something is not worth that much, I'll stay with the naked put. But a lot of times you'll see that you can go out and buy a put spread for about the same $2.75, $3. And here, what we're doing is we're buying the 65, 50, $15 wide put spread for $2.97. And look how much closer, for about the same amount of money, our break even is. The downside is this put spread only protects you to 150. If the stock falls below 150, you're not protected anymore. But if you look at this graph, the faint line, the faint vertical line, there is the 1SD band. And we'll always position our put spread that we're making money even beyond the 1SD band. Now you have to be a little bit more careful. You have to be a little bit more proactive in your hedging and rolling your hedges, as when you're doing a put spread relative to a naked put. But look at the difference in break evens. Now, if the stock falls to 160, I'm at my break even, as opposed to 150 with the naked put. Well, that's still not that great, and I want to nudge how much I can lose to the downside closer to at the money. And so maybe I'll play a BWB or I'll play a butterfly. Let's look at the butterfly. And here's a $15 butterfly trading for 275. So we went from a naked option for 275 to a put spread to 297 to a butterfly to 275. And now with the butterfly, you see that our break even gets nudged even closer to at the money. And then there's other things we're going to be doing in this class. BWBs, unbalanced condors. We're going to be rolling these around, etc. But this is to give you a little glimpse of some of the things that we're definitely going to be doing. Anything more complicated than this is probably going to come up within a 6-month period of time. Rolling this is definitely going to come up in a 6-month period of time. But even then, if we're paying $275 for a put or a put spread or a put butterfly, compared to paying $6 for the at the money, we still want to get that $275 back. So one of the things we can do to get that money back is obviously sell a call. You guys are familiar with that. Now here's the call chain. If we go out and look, we see the 200 strike call on the box on the bottom on the left is trading for about 275. Because our put butterfly or put spread or our naked put all costs about 275, selling this call is a great balance. Now, we could sell a call closer to at the money. We could sell, say, the 190 call for 485 and have a net credit. We could go further out of the money, say the 210 strike, and get $1 less. There's a whole bunch of different things we can do. And one of the things we're going to be doing is selling call spreads instead of calls. I'm definitely going to be selling call spreads instead of calls once in a while, so that if the stock goes through our call strikes, we only don't make money on the appreciation of the stock for the distance between those two strikes. But once it goes through those strikes, it's like we're running naked long stock. So there's a benefit of actually selling a call spread as opposed to just selling a call. You're taking in a little bit less money, but you have a lot more profit potential on the upside. So we're going to be playing all sorts of games. And that's why we're going to do a 6-month study, because over 6 months, every single possible combination of what we can do to this collar will be done. Now, here is a comparison of the put, the put spread, and the put butterfly when combined with the sale of a call for 275. It's hard to see when they're stacked up. There's so much information. But if you just look at that red arrow with the long put and the short call, you see that we have $1,000 of risk to the downside, especially at the 1 SD band. With the long put spread versus the short call spread, that risk is cut in half. Now we have $500 of risk down to the 1 SD band. We have additional risk as we go beyond the 1 SD band. But down to the 1 SD band, our risk is half of what it would be with the naked long put. And I know stocks get surprising. Some people really get freaked out being short, or excuse me, having exposure to the downside on any stock because they're afraid the stock can be cut in half overnight, and it can be. That's why a lot of our students do this in indexes. They know an index is not going to be cut in half overnight. So going from a long put to a long put spread, that gives you less catastrophic insurance, isn't a big deal because they're not worried about the catastrophe. And then you look at the butterfly and you see that it's set up correctly. On the downside, down to the 1 SD band, we don't lose anything. Blown up, this is what I always try to achieve when doing a collar. When I get a collar on, I love this graph. Why? We know 68% of the time the market is going to stay within the 1 SD band to the upside and the downside. Fair enough? Almost all of the time, the market is going to close above the 1 SD band on the put side and below the 1 SD band on the call side. So collars aren't going to give us a problem. If we fall and I don't make or lose anything on the downside under normal conditions, but on the upside I make money, it's like a free coin flip. Heads I win, tails the market loses. Heads I get a buck, tails I don't give back anything. Obviously there's a little bit of risk in that if we go below the 1 SD band, it's as if I'm not insured at all, but that's okay because guess what? We can go out and buy a garbage put right here for maybe 40 cents. Instead of buying a put up here for $6 or $4 or $2.75, if you're afraid about this tail, we can go out and buy a garbage put for disasters. Now we've taken our 275 risk on the put hedge down to 40 cents, but we break even all the way down to the 1 SD band minus 40 cents. So in other words, if we go down, I lose 40 cents. If I go up, I can make up to $25. That is unbelievable risk reward ratio, in my opinion. Now, that's what I ideally like to do. It's going to be a new concept for a lot of people, but you'll be comfortable with it when I'm done. Oops, I don't know how that slide got in there. Now, on the collars, we're going to be doing a lot of collars adjustments. I may be doing even more than one name. And let me clarify that. The name we're picking, actually the name you guys picked, we're going to stick with for 6 months. I'm not going to bounce around from name to name. Good times, bad times, I've known them all. It's all going to be in the same name. If I see a great example in butterfly versus short calls, or a great example of an unusual hedge, a 1-3-2 with puts and a call spread with calls, that does not make sense for our example we're using starting tomorrow, I'll have a second trade on for a couple weeks just to show you guys in a practical manner what's going on with it so that you're continuously learning. And if it requires a second stock for a short period of time, that's fine, but we're not going to get out of the original stock. Why? Everybody is wanting, and they're writing in emails, wanting to see share accumulation. And I can't think of a better time for share accumulation, because guess what? Market's at all-time highs. We're not going to stay at all-time highs. Over the next 6 months, we're going to have a nasty drop or 2 drops or 3 drops, and we're going to end up buying more shares. And that's what most people are having a little bit of difficulty conceptualizing. I'm going to show you in a little bit what I mean by that, but we're going to be doing it. Okay. I'll skip this because this is important. This is not important. I cannibalized this stock, or these slides from a previous class, because it's worth going over a second time, and 3/4 of the people in the room didn't see them the first time, and they need to see them. What are we going to be doing over 6 months? This is the rough outline. The market is going to determine, based on its movement, of where we go from here and how many different ways we spider web out. But as far as the main big picture, what we're going to see is this. On the call side, as the market runs up, what do we hope happens? Let's say we're in a stock and we sell the 52.5 call, because to say the stock's at 45, 50, whatever. And we'll say in this case, actually, let's start out saying the stock is at 52.5 right now. And we want to sell a call and buy a put. So we go $5 out of the money on the upside, and we sell the 57.5 call for 2 and buy the 50 put for 2. Maybe the 47.5 put for 2. Maybe a butterfly for 2. Whatever our put hedge is, I'm going to only focus on the call side here. What is it ideally we hope to have happen? Ideally, over the course of the time we put the trade on and its expiration, the stock starts gliding up towards the short call. Very rarely is it going to glide up to the strike price and close there at expiration worthless just to make us happy. A lot of times it's going to go through the call strike and we're going to have to roll. Not a big deal. But ideally, we want it to get up right to the call strike. We paid 2 for the puts hedges. We received 2 for the call, so we don't make or lose anything on our hedges. But we did make almost $5 on the stock. Now we want to lock in that advance that the stock made, so we re-hedge it and we move our hedges up. We ratchet it up like a ratchet wrench. So we originally bought the 50 put, or maybe the 47.5 put. Now we go up to the 52.5 put, which is where we bought our stock. We bought the stock at 52.5, and now we own the 52.5 put, and the stock goes to 0, we break even. And this happened to me a long time ago with Enron. I rode Enron all the way to 0, owning Enron when it went out worthless. And I made money. People were like, how can you make money in Enron riding it all the way to 0? I got a couple weeks break ahead of time before it blew up. Here we go out and buy the 52.5 put. We go out and sell the 62 and a half call, save $5 out of the money. And what do we hope happens? The same thing. Over the course of week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, depending on our expiration cycle we pick. Oh, did you hear that? Be depending on the expiration cycle we pick. That's going to be an important consideration and component of choosing the correct collar. There's going to be a lot of talk about it. There's going to be a whole podcast on just determining what is the best expiration to play it in. And the same stock will have different periods. You may be playing XYZ, and sometimes you want to play it weekly. And the same stock, you'll go out to 2 weeks, and then sometimes you'll go out to 4 weeks. When do you know to go from 1 week to 4 weeks or 4 weeks to 1 week? That's going to be part of this class. That alone will solve huge amount of problems for people. I get an email all the time saying, I keep picking the wrong expiration cycle to do this in. Don't worry. So do I. But we're going to narrow down how often we to pick the wrong expiration cycle down to probabilities instead of guesswork. So now the stock ran up to the strike price again. What do? Expiration comes and you got to rehedge. Now remember, we started out buying the stock at 52 and a half. Now we're hedging with a new put that's $5 out of the money at the 57 and a half strike. So our put is now $5 higher than the value of the stock when we bought it. So no matter what, the stock goes to zero, we make $5. And we sell a call, $5 out of money. And again, we hope the market goes up a little bit, hopefully up to the top of our call strike and sit. We're always going to go through it. Well, that's hyperbole. I meant that as kind of like a little bit of frustration, because anyone who's in collars watches the stock go dramatically through their call strike. They sold and they get frustrated because they know they're not making money on that stock advance. Well, we're going to have to roll. Next expiration, we want the same thing to happen. Put the new collar on. Hopefully the market runs up. And we just keep laddering up. Okay. Now look at this. We bought the stock at 52 and a half. It's at 72 and a half. We're up $20 on a $52 stock. We're up nearly 40%. And we're hedged. That's ideally what we want with the call side. Okay. Now on the put side, what is our focus? It's going to be completely the opposite. Okay. Stocks do crash at times. Let's say the stock gets the highs and guess what? We're hedged. We owned the 62 and a half put and we sold the 72 and a half call. The stock is at 70, whatever. And now the market falls. What do we do? Question came in. So do we ever hedge prior to expiration based on price? Absolutely. That is a great question. I see a lot of people bringing me collars in emails and saying, what would you do here, Scott? I'm looking at it and say, first of all, you're long a put. It's trading for a nickel. How much protection is it giving you? So far out of the money, it's trading for a nickel. Let's roll. Obviously, the stock went higher. Let's roll the hedges up. Well, it's not expiration. I understand that. But if you wait until expiration, The stock may be back where it started from by then. Let's roll when the market gives us a chance. Or the opposite with calls. The market falls. Call they sold at 2 is now down to 10 cents. I'm like, why are you short this call? How much can you make on this call that's trading for 10 cents? Let's just buy it back, sell a new call in a different expiration, or roll the strikes down and get some more money in. This 10 cents is not going to give you anything. Well, it's not expiration yet. It doesn't have to be. So, I mean, a great example of it's Tesla today. We had on a Dragonfly Tesla. We've had it on for a couple weeks. The stock has stunk. It looked like we were going to have a loss on Tesla. Thankfully, we hedged off 80% of it. We left 10% or 20% of it unhedged. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the stock's up $11 and blows through all the strikes to the upside. When we thought the calls were going to go out worthless, now the Dragonfly is completely in the money. Well, if I waited until expiration on that, if it were a collar and I waited till expiration to buy back my short calls, the out of the money 200 calls that are now in the money would have been trading for 20 cents. And then they blow back up to $4. Why are you going to let an option that's worth 10 cents go back to $4? So, yes, to answer your question, we're not necessarily waiting till expiration to shut things down. Especially if we buy a put for $1 and it's out trading for $8 because the stock sold off. What are you going to wait for? Expiration to sell that put at 8? What if it's like Tuesday? Recall Monday. For those people who are in pot, we bought a put spread for $1 and a nickel. Tuesday, the market sells off. I went out on the open and sold some puts near to make a butterfly for $2.20. At the end of the day, the market was down 101 points. The put spread I was long was in the money, but I went further out of the money and sold the put spread for $2.90. And people were saying, I was getting the email saying, Scott, why are you selling this for $2.90? It's in the money. It looks like it's going to go to $5. I go, it's got 5 days to expiration. Can this market bounce and these puts go out worthless in 5 days? I'll take the $2.90 now and leave a condor to play with. And guess what? We sold them at $2.90. At the end of the day, they closed at 2. They opened the next day at 1:30. And right now, they're probably only worth 50 cents. Had we waited until expiration to close them out, they might be worth 0. We got $2.90. We have a condor on for a $300 credit. Move on to the next thing. The same rules apply with collars. Okay, so someone wrote, in other words, make sure your Slack notifications are on. Don't fall asleep with your collar on. Correct. Okay, now the thing is with the collars, people, you're not going to get anywhere near the notifications in Slack that people in pot are. I would say on average, you'll get 1 notification a day. Most of the correspondence will be through email because most people that are in just the collars portion of pot are extremely busy and they just care about the collars and only the collars and really just wake me up when something's happening. If it's you're providing me general information, I'll wait until I got time to look at my email. I know you're sending me emails every single day. There'll be an email every single day. I'll read it. I'll see it come in. It'll blow up on my phone or in my email, and I'll read it when I get a chance. But when I know there's a Slack update coming, it's because a trade's out there, and I'll make time right now for the trade adjustment. So let's go back to this example here. Sorry to get off topic, but these were some important questions I didn't want to blow off. So we were in this hedge and we went out and bought the 62.5 put, and then the stock fell. Now what? Well, there was some slippage. We didn't hedge correctly here. The stock was close to 70. We probably should have adjusted, but we didn't because our puts are all the way at the 62.5 strike, $7.50 out of the money. So that first fall of $7.50 is a loss, or not necessarily a loss. Some people call it giving back profits. It's slippage. But at the 62.5 strike, our put locks in any further loss. Then the stock continued to fall past 62.5 down to 55 strike, and that is going to be converted. That's going to be converted in what came from the stock. Any loss in the stock gets converted into profit in the put that later becomes cash when we sell the put, and we're going to use that cash to buy more shares. So here, the 62.5 put down to 55 is going to be $7.50 cash profit. And then what do you do with it? Well, if we got 1,000 shares, we have $7.50 of intrinsic value. We're going to have $7,500 in cash. The stock is now at 55. I can buy 136 more shares without adding money to the account. The avoidance of loss from owning that put created intrinsic value in that put, and now I'm going to convert that into at least another 100 shares. Sometimes if I'm really bullish, I'll buy 130 shares. If I'm undecided or uncertain what's going to happen, I'll re-hedge and buy an extra 100 shares so that I have a hedgeable quantity. I went from 10 contracts to 11 contracts of hedging, and 1,000 shares to 1,100 shares. And some previous examples of this, a couple of you been around and saw this. I think AK for sure, and Mike A. Let's see who else is in here. Bill for sure. There's probably about 10 people who see me do this before. Maybe Frank Y. Dennis for sure. Brian for sure. Bill for sure. We did a Starbucks one like this. Yeah, you're right. We also did an eBay one, and I hate eBay, but we did an eBay one, and it was probably our most successful. I think we darn near doubled the amount of shares we owned. The stock didn't move, but we were continuously buying more and more shares with anything made in the puts because the stock fell hard. We bought a lot of shares, fell again. We bought more shares, then it went back up. We re-hedged, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And by the end of the project, we pretty much doubled our shares of stock without putting a single penny into it. AA was recently done in American Airlines was recently done during COVID. And guess what? During COVID is one of the worst times to own a stock and one of the worst stocks to own during that period. Okay. You guys remember this. The whole world was afraid they were going to die. And what happened? They just kept beating on the airline stocks. Airline stocks were gyrating all over the place. We started out with 1,000 shares. You can see it at the top. And pretty much every week, every 2 weeks, the stock would take a beating. We'd sell out the put, get the cash, and buy more shares. And we weren't able to buy 100 share chunks. You can see right here The first time we could only buy 40 more shares, then 60, then 100, then 30, then 20, etc. But then we just started shutting this thing down. I made my point. Well, guess what? In this collar study, my point is not over with for 6 months. You get a much longer perspective. Hold on a second. I just got bombarded with a lot of questions. Hold on a second. One person, LG. I don't want to give away people's identities, but there's a couple people I can give away, like AK. He doesn't mind. We're buddies. Mike A. Everybody knows Mike A. and I are close. He doesn't care. But assume you have a fly hedge. If the stock falls lower than your protection, how do you handle it? There's several different ways. And we're probably going to see several different ways. Most of the time, I'm just going out and buying tails. It depends on how much time there is until expiration. If there's still a lot of time till expiration, the butterfly is not going to open up. So I'm going to be forced to go buy tails to avoid a disaster. But if we're close to expiration, sometimes we can roll butterflies around. I was rolling butterflies around in the SPX today. With today's expiration, like, oh, it looks like we're closing at the 20 strike. Oh, it looks like we're closing at the 30 strike. And every time we got at the money, I'd sell them and then move them up. Now, let's see. Great question. How much capital are you planning for the study? Will it be done in a way that we can scale to match our individual capital target? Scott, other than having a great name, I'm a little bit confused on that last portion of the question. Okay. Will it be done in a way that we can scale to match our individual capital target? Can you clarify what that question is? I think I know what you're asking, but clarify it so I don't want I nail it, and then while you're clarifying it, I'll move on and get back to your question. I am not going into a crazy stock. My favorite stock, the people in pot heard, my favorite stock is not that semiconductor that's on fire. My favorite stock of the year has been AMD. And when it got down to 93 or 95 back in Halloween, I said, let's buy AMD. And everybody crapped on it and said, no, it's too expensive because it was 93. Now it's what, 180? So now it is too expensive for the average person. I'm going to be doing enough shares, and I'm not giving away the stock name yet because we're going to go in blind. It came down to one of two different stocks, and it was a tie. You guys picked the stock, not me. This is not my stock. This is the stock you guys picked. That's how blind I am. It came down to two different stocks as a tie. They're doing the office vote still to this moment. Whatever lopsides that decision is the one I'm picking. Whatever has so it's going to be one of two different names. One's slightly expensive. One's about a $40 stock. One's about an $80 stock. 80 is a little high to start with 500 shares, or 1,000 shares. It's 20 G's on 500 if you buy it on margin. We can do a call instead of stock. The great thing about this project is that during the journal portion, you're going to see a lot of different things you've never seen before. In the past, if I picked an $80 stock and just said, hey, I am going to do this because it's so expensive, I'm going to do a call instead of stock, and we just went from there. At no time did I circle back and say, what if I did, instead of 500 shares, 250 shares or 100 shares? We just totally ignored and wrote off the fact that it was an expensive stock and went from there. We never compared it to what if we just bought less shares of actual shares. In the journal, there's going to be side by side comparisons. There's going to be a lot of stuff you've never seen before. Okay, now the question came in. If you allocate 10K and we want to use 15K, will it be apparent as to how we adjust the number of shares and options? Yes, you just are going to have to do 50% more. So if I come up with a $15 stock and buy 1,000 shares, or excuse me, a $10 stock and buy 1,000 shares, that's going to be $10,000. If you want to do 15,000, you're just going to buy 500 more shares. Then when I'm hedging with six, or let's say 10 contracts, you're going to be hedging with 15 contracts. And then when I go and buy 200 more shares, you're going to be buying 300 more shares. And it'll be off a little bit because you're not starting with the same number. I may be able to get 100 and you're going to get 150 one time. So you're going to be running around with 50 shares unhedged. But that never bothers me. You saw right here, the first trade, we had 40 shares unhedged for 2 weeks. Then we got 60 more shares that brought us up to 100. The next hedge was 100 shares, so now we're fine. But on 8/4, we bought 30 shares. Then we bought 2 weeks later another 20 shares. That's 50 shares unhedged. Sometimes it's going to work out, sometimes it's not. In other words, sometimes not having on a perfect hedge is going to be a benefit, and sometimes it's going to be a hindrance. Over the long run of this, it should cancel out the odd lots. There'll be a lot more details we go. So, like your question about allocation and stuff, as questions come in, they're going to go into the journal. I'm going to answer people's individual questions, and if it sounds like something everybody is going to be interested in, instead of answering them individually and just sending it back like I normally do, you guys have no idea how many emails I send out a day. Because you only see the one that you send and I respond to. In this, anything that's pertinent to most people in the collar section is going to go out in the group. And don't worry about your anonymity or asking a dumb question. First of all, the only dumb questions are the ones that are asked. Second of all, if it's going out to the group, it's not a dumb question because I think they're going to get benefit from it. And most importantly, it's going out anonymously. Okay. Worst case, if it's a really, really dumb question, I'll just put down AK as the sender. So yes, when I'm buying new shares, I think I understand what you're asking. Question came in. So you are only buying new shares when the stock drops. I'm going to start out with a certain number of shares. On stock A that I have in mind. Stock B, I'm going to be doing a call instead of stock. And if the stock drops, we'll be converting the puts into shares, and then we'll be getting shares for the first time. But I'm only going to be buying more shares with the capital that we're using. I am not going to be saying, well, I'm going to go to a savings account, get another 10 grand because the stock fell and I want to buy more shares. No. If we're using $20,000 at the start, at the end of the experiment, and throughout the full 6 months, we will never need another penny more than that original 20 grand. Why? Many people go on margin call. if they trade in such a way that they use up more money than they have. They don't, they may have 20,000 in an account and that's it. And if all of a sudden they got to do something and they run out of money and they go on a margin call, it affects them negatively. Now, I probably shouldn't even tell you this story because it's going to sound like I got a bad gambling habit, but I don't care. I'm going to be completely honest with you. One of the best hands I ever had in blackjack, ever, ever. I was in Vegas. And I was at this one casino that I almost never go to because I was with a partner at Trade Secrets, and he wanted to try a new casino because he's convinced the other casinos that we normally go to had it out for him. It wasn't probabilities, it wasn't statistics, it was the casino itself hated him. So he had to find a new casino. Okay, so we went to a new casino, and then he started getting frustrated because I was playing probabilities and he wanted me to play hunches. And he wanted me to play his hunches. So he got up and went to a different table. I get dealt a hand, pair of aces, I split them. What comes up? Another ace, I split it. Comes up another ace. I've got 5 aces down. But it was towards the end where I was getting tired and frustrated. And I was betting bigger than I normally do because I knew it was my last hand. I was only going to bet one hand somewhat big, but I didn't have enough capital to split aces 5 times and then double down 5 times. So what happens? First one, I get a king. Can't be better. Second one, I get like a 3 or something. I'm playing them. I get another ace somehow. So now I split that. The pot is becoming crazy big. I ran out of cash. I didn't have any more chips. I had to yell to my buddy Mike, "Hey Mike, I need to borrow a couple grand real quick." If he wasn't around, I would have had to play crappy hands and couldn't split, and I'd have to go in. I wouldn't have been able to split the last pair of aces. I would have had to play them. And I don't want to be playing a 12 or a 2 when I can play 2 face cards. Thankfully, he was there, and he lent me a couple grand for a couple minutes, and I could split those aces again. Long story short, I don't want to get you guys in that position with a stock where it's the perfect time to hedge. But all 20 grand or 15 grand or 30 grand or whatever we start with is allocated, and you can't put another $5 in for a put if you need it. We are not going to go $1 above what our starting price is, our starting capital. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question? I'm sorry, I hit the pause button. Can you hear me? Okay, where did I leave off at? Okay, I think I left off at I don't want to get you in that position. Now, the next question that came in, hopefully there's not a bunch of one-offs. In pot class, we had a weird week this week where it was like a perfect storm of not getting filled. One person got their order to cancel trade in way too late, so he was filled, and that became a problem. And another person got filled on a different one that expired or didn't was canceled, but he got filled and no one else did. And I didn't find out about it until not only the next day, but hours and hours after the next day when the market moved the wrong way. And I'm in the middle of writing up all the rules for fills on the collars because it's going to be new to a lot of people. A lot of people in the collars class aren't used to the etiquette of what we do with fills and pot. These same rules are going to apply to pot people. Okay. So tomorrow you're going to get a list of all the expectations that I have of you and that you should have of me during this in terms of fill prices. Now, next thing. How those fills came in American Airlines is look at this. The stock kept dropping. It's no fun when you own a stock and it drops, but it created opportunity for us. And then the minute it bounced, we shut it down. And we shut it down a little early because we shut it down when the stock was at about 20, a little over 20. But if you look at this, where we started it, had I waited a little bit longer, we could have had a kind of a cool thing. Because we started trading at 22.38. That was our first purchase. We shut this whole trade down when we were at 20, and we were still up money. We made money even though our first purchase was at 22 and shut it down when the stock was 10% lower. We ended up with 200 more shares, and we still made money even though the stock was off 10%. Had we waited another week, look what happened. We kept falling and falling. We're buying more shares. And this is the power of a collar. Stock then bounced a little bit off the lows, and people said, let's go into the cruise lines instead. And I shut it down a little above 20. But if we waited, a week later, we got back to 22.38. I could have scratched the original purchase that we bought at 22.38, sold at 22.38. We would have been up a lot more money and long 200 shares. That's what's cool about the collar. Now, we're almost done, guys. This is the biggest present I'm ever given pot people. I announced it. We put it in Facebook, and other people told friends about it and stuff like that. And it, out of the woodwork, a whole bunch of people not in pot, but heard we're doing it and said, I want in. I don't want in pot. I just want to be in the collar portion. And so we had to divide it up real quick. Then I said, fine, we can start Monday. Monday was unrealistic. I was too aggressive. I just wanted to start, okay? But I was too aggressive. I'm probably too aggressive starting tomorrow. The office is still working right now to get Slack updates and stuff like that. We got people signing up, and we don't know. They've got to be able to operate Slack on their end, and they haven't tested it yet. There's going to be glitches if I start tomorrow, but there's going to be glitches whenever I start. Okay. In the last class, I started saying we're going to start Monday. Okay. We had to push it back because we have new counts. We got to add Slack. We had a lot more to do than I even anticipated because this thing is growing more than just our normal collar. Normally, with our collar trade, we would just put it in the same account as the pot trades. Got to open up another account. Got to open up Slack accounts. Got to start the journal. Get the electronic journal going. We got new Google Sheets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm going to be keeping a daily journal, recording stock prices, option chains, option volatility prices, stock price, every single variable that's making any difference into this collar. And I can't see this thing being less than 400 pages over 6 months. Everyone in pot for the 6 months will get the journal for free. The office is not going to let you sign up for pot for a week, drop out, and then give you the book for 6 months of trading. We caught on to that little one. But even then, this is a huge benefit, okay, considering the cost. I'll probably be writing an average of 30 minutes a day. I've already kind of guesstimated, and my guesstimates are pretty close. When I say how long I'm going to take to write something, as long as I'm not interrupted, I'm pretty close. Okay, non-pot students, if you're buying just the collar portion, you'll get the journal for whatever portion of the class you're in. If you want the whole journal, which is really a book, you'll be paying for the staff's working time. This is going to be, but if you're in the whole time, you get the book for free too. And this is going to be literally the most comprehensive collar study we've ever done in real time. So again, the collars component, we kept it really cheap. Now I know some people say $159 a month. For what you are getting, go to any I don't care. Don't. It's too expensive. Don't sign up. I don't care. I really don't. This is so much work on my part. It's not even funny. The office is going to go crazy. Most of this money has gone to the extra office hours created to facilitate this. The girls are going nuts. But for 6 months, $858. If you can find a better deal, any education company out there, go ahead. Okay, I teach at Northwestern a lot, and they've got books that cost $858. Just the book. And what you're getting again is the book. You're going to be getting Slack updates whenever we do a trade. You're going to be getting the real time or close to real time, near real time, Google Sheets, and 6-pot classes. The best deal we've ever done. Seriously, this is like, as far as the education industry is concerned, and our pricing schedule is probably on the low end of everybody in the industry. This is on the low end of our low end. And why have I not done this thing this extensively before? There's crazy amount of work going into this. Crazy amount of work. I made the determination to do this. Afterwards, take a little vacation, see the running of the bulls, or go to the Philippines to help with this charity that we donate to, or some kind of fun event. To relax a little bit and give myself a vacation. You're going to be getting an email if you're not in pot. You're going to be getting an email shortly with sign-up links if you're interested. Are you buying stock with call credits too? Whenever we have enough capital laying around for extra shares of stock, and not like 1 share or 4 shares, but something that's going to build to an options contract in a reasonable amount of time. If I've got cash laying around and can buy 10 shares, I may not do it, but anything like 20, 40, 50 that eventually will accumulate to 100 shares, so we have one more hedging contract, I will do it, regardless of where the credit came from, the call or the put. So, when do we start? We're going to start tomorrow, 99% chance. The only thing that'll stop us is a technical glitch on the office side, because we are setting up a lot of new accounts, new Slack accounts and stuff like that. Whenever the girls give me the green light tomorrow, then you'll find out what 2 stocks we had decided between, which one won the vote, and a lot of stuff's coming out. We'll slap the trade on. Unless something happens weird in the market, we probably won't have an adjustment the first day, and then we're going to come out of the chutes on Monday. Now remember, this is a long weekend. which is also a great time to start this because it gives the office plenty of time to get everything ready, that little loose ends. Okay. But you guys are getting the product in pot no matter what. So you need to know what to expect. Otherwise, I'm going to get deluged with questions. Well, are we going to be doing this? Are we going to be doing that? I explain what we're going to be doing. Those who are not in pot right now, if you have any questions, feel free to contact the office. They'll forward it to me if they haven't answered it already, or if I haven't answered it and they can cut and paste, or if they know the answer. It's going to be a lot of fun, guys. It's going to be a lot of work. This is probably going to be the most amount of work I put into any project yet. So if 5% of you guys get to my level, it was worth my work. And yes, there's going to be a separate channel on Slack. I think pot people are not going to have a separate channel. In terms of capital, I'm probably going to be starting with under 30. I always try under 30. On margin, obviously that means 15. And for those people who have 15 and can only do 7,500, you just do 500 shares instead of 1,000. It still works the same way. There will be little glitches if you're doing different amounts of money, because I may be doing 7 contracts. If you're doing half of 7 contracts, you got to decide if you want to round up or round down. Okay? We'll figure it out, guys. It's going to be a learning process for both of us. I've never done it where it's going to be this interactive and this much involvement with you guys. Before, I just sort of took charge, said, hold my beer, watch me, have a seat, eat popcorn, and just watch me. Here, you guys are going to be more intimately involved. So there's going to be a couple of hiccups along the way, but that's part of the fun. Sometimes the hiccups work out in our favor.